Welcome to another edition here, Cougar Coaches Show. My name is Cosmo with head coach Tim Cornell, the Columbia College track and field, cross country, sprints,
a little bit of everything.
running,
Yeah.
everything.
A little bit of everything.
And I think that's fantastic. Over the 2 years of the seasons, we've talked about the addition of having your runners not just cross country, but get involved in some of the track and field events, and now even some steeplechase that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Emily Schultz, big honor for her, first AMC runner of the week. We'll start with her, and her accolade, well-deserved, huh?
Very well-deserved. She ran a great race this weekend for us, and she's a runner who's really burst onto the scene for us last year. Struggled a little bit in the transition to college, but has really stepped up academically, athletically, and as a leader for us in her second year, and this honor is, maybe didn't happen soon enough, but it's certainly well-deserved.
I think that's the interesting part about your sport is that it's individual athletes, but it's also a team sport. Then you go to an event like the Missouri Relays, and you have NCAA athletes like some Tigers, and then you've got NAIA and NCAA Division I, Division II, JUCO runners. I mean, you cover it all. A couple high school kids trying to sneak in and impress some coaches early. I mean, literally, you're trying to imagine that there's something else. You really can't unless it's like an all-star event or something. But it's got to be rewarding to see some of your athletes compete with the big kids as far as the NCAA level.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime that we can push ourselves against athletes at that level, athletes who are a little bit better than we are no matter where they come from. And I think the NAIA has some tremendous runners. They're just spread across the country and we don't see them all the time. But Missouri Relays typically brings together a bunch of schools from the state of Missouri. And that's always fun. You see people that you ran against in high school who maybe beat you, and then you're trying to get them back come college time. So it's a different aspect for us, a different kind of competition. But we're pushing ourselves against people who are better than we are, and we came out and did really well on Saturday.
And Emily finished second, right?
Yeah,
behind
she was
one of the Missouri runners.
She was second, and I think another couple meters, and she wins that race. She was coming on strong. We had a conservative race plan with her, wanted to stay cautious with the wind, very windy day. She did a good job of tucking in when it was windy and then moving on the backstretch when she had the wind with her. It was a very impressive race.
And if you don't mind demonstrating, that was something that I think you don't really think about too much. You think, okay, it's running, it's outside. Mm-hmm. There's more strategy, obviously, to some of the cross-country events in her race. But when you say tucking, what does that mean?
Sure. So she was running with a pack of 3 or 4 other athletes, and when she was against the wind, she would run behind those 3 or 4 runners. Then when she made her decisive move, she did it on the back stretch when she had the wind behind her and going with her, and was able to use that to her advantage.
You talking to Carl Edwards and getting some drafting?
I guess so, yeah.
But in a way.
Yeah, nobody got put into the wall, so.
That's an aspect, though, that I don't think you really stop and think about. I didn't until I saw your quotes about playing with the wind and the elements, and that's a whole nother part of it. You go out on a beautiful sunny day with no wind or light rain, and you run a different way.
Sure, and it's a large reason why some of the best track and field meets in the country happen in Southern California. The weather is predictable. It's 65 to 75 degrees. There's very little wind at night. A lot of people congregate there to run. In Missouri, it's a completely different story. We saw 75, 80 degrees on Saturday, really windy, and then heck, it snowed on Monday. So. Exactly. Just a different part of the country.
Some other events and some other athletes, talk about who else you had in the Missouri Relays and that steeplechase that everybody keeps wanting to talk about.
Sure, yeah, it was a really good day, and it kept us busy. We were out there for a bunch of hours, and I felt like we just kept going and running well. So Emily started us off with a good day. We had a couple athletes in Devin Sander and Riley Fader run really well in 1500s. I thought Riley really put herself out there and went after the front half of that race harder than she had before. Put herself in a position to succeed and hung on and did a great job. Devin Sanders is a kid who just keeps getting better. He's a local guy. He went to Columbia Hickman, and he just keeps getting smarter as a racer. And that was really one of the things that was holding him back. He's always been fit, ready to go for us, does a great job in training, but positioning himself within the race has not always been his strongest suit. And he's becoming a lot better than that. And then the steeplechase we got to at the end of the day. Tommy Skoski and Michael McCulloch, 2 fantastic male runners for us. First time they'd ever steepled. They've been working really hard in practice to get ready for that event. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the steeple, 5 barriers every single lap. There is a water jump. So you jump up on the barrier and then jump over some water. and keep going. So it's a much different race than distance runners are typically used to. Both guys did really well for
And
it.
is it one water jump, or they all have water?
There's one water jump every lap, and then there are 4 normal barriers. So they're just kind of like big hurdles.
It's like the wood.
Exactly.
Almost looks like the horse is jumping over the whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing. So the hurdle moves, the barrier doesn't. So you got to make sure that you get over the barrier.
Now, when you said they practice for that event, is that something that Mizzou has set up at their track and field location where you can actually practice that? Or
Yeah, we went over there a couple of nights after Missouri was done practicing and practiced the water jump. Typically, when you practice just the hurdling over barriers, you're using a hurdle because you don't want to introduce any more risk than you have to. And they did a great job. Both of them took to it very naturally. It's one of those things that you never know how hard it is until you get in the middle of the race. And it's a really, really hard race, fatiguing in a different way than we're used to. So I was very proud of them that they kept it together, kept their heads on straight throughout that entire race.
what is the distance of the
3,000 meters.
3,000? So that's,
Just short of 2 miles.
wow, with a lot of jumping
A lot of jumping.
and a pond
Yes.
a few times.
It's a fun race to watch, and typically you get a lot of spectators out. People will congregate around that water pit. They're hoping for the worst, and
Yeah.
as a coach, you're sitting there crossing your fingers
Yeah.
that it doesn't happen, and they don't get to see that.
Well, that's certainly, from the announcement a couple, 3 years ago of the addition of cross country to Columbia College, the fact that the athletes have been able to branch off into the indoor track and field meets, which we'll kind of flash back a little bit to that earlier in March. But it's not just the cross country meets. You're involved in getting them qualified for a ton of events, including steeplechase.
Sure. Steeplechase, national championship races, flashing back to indoors. Had our first All-American on the track, so that was a really fun race for us to be at.
And again, take us to that honor for your team.
Sure. We went to the national championships with 5 young ladies, a 4x8, and then Lindsay Martin and Emily Schultz in the 5K. Emily had a bit of a tough day in that 5K, but Lindsay bettered her PR by over 30 seconds in the 5K and was able to not only qualify for the final, but end up 3rd in that race with a really strong kick. Ran smart races both days. So anytime that you can tuck in and just let somebody else do some work for you, it's really important. We talk a lot about it. It's more important outside than inside because you're dealing with the weather and you're dealing with the wind. But I think there's also a mental break that happens when you can just run behind somebody else.
You're not the pace setter necessarily.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And having that mental break leaves some energy left at the end to go and try and beat people.
Where, as we pause for a moment and then come back and we'll talk about what lies ahead, scheduling wise, and some other of your performers, where does the recruiting phase of your job as coach come in from instructing and helping your current athletes to finding future Cougar runners?
Well, it's all intermingled, and it happens throughout the year. We're watching cross-country kids run and track and field kids run all throughout the year, kind of like the way that we compete. We're competing all the time. We're watching kids run all the time. We're on the phone all the time trying to bring in new Cougars and make this team better.
All right, when we come back, I know you're heading to Kansas for a big race, and then there's 4 or 5 races really in the next month and a half before the season wraps up for the Columbia College Cougars, the cross-country team, track and what do you want them to call it again?
Cross-country and distance track is what we prefer.
Distance track.
Distance track.
With a few jumping over water obstacles. We'll be back with the coach, Tim Cornell, right after this here on Mediacom Channel 22.